Alright, so today I'm back with yet a new chapter review, and today we will go over chapter 300, which feels a bit insane to say. But anyway, this chapter is completely insane, as we will see Reo and Nagi take their final and last goodbye to each other. And I don't want to say too much, but it gets a bit emotional. But anyway, you will just have to sit back and watch to find out what happens. Anyway, please leave a like and a comment as well. Anyway, with that out of the way, let's get into it. So to begin chapter 300 with the text saying he wants to say this to Reo, who he dreamed with what Nagi thinks right now. We then get back to both Nagi and Reo, where we see that Nagi is still sitting comfortably down on the ground while Reo is standing by his side crying. Nagi thinks back to one of their earlier moments and calls out Rio's name. He starts to get up and says that he has no regrets. Nagi explains that it's just like Ego said and that he was satisfied. He's finally standing beside Reo now, and he tells him that to win against Iseji and play soccer with Reo forever, only having that would be enough for him. However, he himself admits that a dream like that wasn't nearly enough, thinking that to survive in Blue Lock, his dream was too small and too childish. Nagi starts to scratch his neck and says that if that time he hadn't won against Iseji and gotten angry, and if Reo wouldn't have spoiled him like he did back in a mansion, City versus Bastard Munching game, then just maybe the future would have looked different. Hearing those words coming out of Nagi only makes Reo more emotional, and he starts to cry even more. But even then, Nagi continues and apologizes to Reo, saying that rather than wanting to become the world's best, he was more scared of losing Reo in the end. Also, I know that it's really emotional right now, but a quick side note is that it must be so awkward for all of the other players just standing there watching them anyway. Nagi then starts to look down towards the ground and apologizes for not finding a new dream. Even after Reo managed to become strong on his own, Ngi chose to still pass to Reo, so he apologizes for that and for not taking that shot against Otoya. He continues and is about to apologize for not keeping his promise. But then Reo goes forward and puts his hand on Nagi's shoulder and tells him that it's enough. We then see Rio's face, and he looks absolutely destroyed and crushed as he tells Nagi to not apologize anymore, and that Nagi didn't do anything wrong at all. Nagi then looks down towards Reo, who continues, and even though Nagi didn't like soccer at first, he still tagged along for Rio's dream. And just a small detail, but seeing Rio's teardrop falling down on the grass just hits so deep. After that, Reo continues, and Reo apologizes for forcing Nagi and says that he's sorry for making him try his best. Then with a super shaky tone, he tells Nagi that he doesn't have to do that anymore, telling Nagi that it's all right and that he shouldn't apologize for anything. Nagi just looks at Reo with a stone face before he grabs Rio's hand and says his name. He puts away Rio's hand from his shoulder and holds his wrist and tells Reo that he was happy. Reo looks a bit shocked, but relieved while hearing that. Nagi then tells him that Reo is pushy, selfish, and scared. However, when he was with Reo, Nagi was able to meet the new him many times, explaining that he got fired up by his soccer all the way back in the first selection, and that in the second selection, he also became frustrated and lame too. Not to mention how many cruel things he said to Reo. But even then in the Neo Egoist League, he knew that the feeling of winning felt extremely good. But even then, he still kept thinking about how lonely he would be without Reo. Those words just hit Reo right to his chest, as it even got dark around him. Ngi then continues and says that Reo showed him the light, and even though he was a pain, everything that came after Nagi met Reo, he will treasure it for life. We then see some of their sweet moments together, mostly from their school days. Reo continues to cry, but Nagi then releases Rio's hand and tells him that probably he lost because he started thinking like this, and because he valued being with Reo more than anything, and because of all that combined, he stopped being a genius. He then tells Reo that if they had just passed by each other that day, then they would have surely become stronger and maybe even the best in the world. As he says that we can see the vision of them winning the World Cup together slowly, but surely fading away as Nagi tells Reo that their world's best ends here. Nagi, while looking more nonchalant and stone-faced than ever before, puts his hand on Rio's head and says goodbye to him while holding onto Rio's head. He tells Reo to become the world's best on his own. And just having Nagi's hand on his head and hearing those words is just too much for Reo to handle. So his tears can't stop rolling down his face, and he looks so sad. We then see Igarashi, Baru, Zantetsu, Chedri, Kunigami, and Bakira all watching this go down. However, there's of course one more player who's looking intensely at this, and that's of course Iseijai, who screams Nagi's name as he is walking away. Iseijai looks shocked as he is seeing Nagi leave. However, Nagi waits up and looks back towards Iseijai, who actually starts to cry, but then he takes all of his energy and his aura starts to appear around him as he screams at Nagi not to quit soccer, which I believe is the little push Nagi desperately needed as we see him in the next panel. And if you look really close, then you can see his fire in his eyes starting to appear before he walks out. We also see Igarashi and Neru who are walking out together, and both of them are crying. I feel bad for Igarashi, don't get me wrong, but I mostly feel bad for Neru, who didn't even get a single chance to prove himself, as he only got to sit on the bench this entire Neo Egoist League. We also see Dre and Hate being frustrated about all of this, but on their side, we also see Tokamitsu, who looks insanely crushed as he has his hands covering his face and is probably crying his eyes out. Anyway, with that Blue Lock Phase 2 and the Neo Egoist League are completed, and as Nagi walks out of the Losers Gate, we see that the next phase is of course the U20 World Cup. We also see both Reo and Iseijai crying their eyes out as they are watching Nagi, who they have spent so much time with, just leave them anyway. The text at the bottom says, winners and losers walk different paths. In the next issue, a new arc will start now. The next chapter will be called Parade, and even though it's a bit of a sour time for most of the Blue Lock players, I do suspect that it will be some kind of celebration for the ones who have made it, which would be really cool to see, as I really want for Buttra, Chiri, Kagami, and of course EG have another little reunion where they can talk about everything and just celebrate that all of them have survived. Now, this chapter was insanely heavy, and like Nagi's and Rio's conversation was really important, of course, but it was a lot like they have been with each other since Nagi's soccer journey even started. And now they have to part ways, which feels insane. But even though it sucks for both of them, this will only lead them to becoming even better on their own. Because I believe that if Reo gets his act together and tries to play on his own, then he will evolve into an insane striker. We already saw how insane he was. In the FC Barker game where he scored a wonder goal, and if he can replicate goals like that with his copy ability, then he will legit become unstoppable. I also don't think that this is the end for Nagi, as he will most likely join the club that bid on him, which I believe to be Shine City. And in that club, he will train together with Aggie and Chris Prince, for example. And meanwhile, the Blue Lock players are out playing in the U20 World Cup. Nagi will be back behind and work like a beast to make his comeback and get stronger on his own. Because after Ashji told him not to quit soccer, I have no doubt in my mind that he will come back and make his return not to Blue Lock, as he will never return to Blue Lock. But if they go to their clubs later on, that's where I believe that Nagi will make his comeback. But please let me know in the comments what you think will happen to the prodigy Nagi now in this chapter. I would have liked Zantetsu to say something to Nagi before he left. I mean, they were in the first team together, and they all became pretty close. So not seeing him at least say goodbye to Nagi felt wrong. Now, he and Reo will obviously discuss it in a later chapter, but still, I would have liked him to say something. Now for the last part, I want to try and speculate what will happen in the next chapter, even though it feels pretty obvious. By the way, I forgot to mention it before. However, there's a break next week, unfortunately, so we will have to wait 2 weeks. Sadly. Anyway, in the next chapter, I believe that there will be some sort of party for the players. I honestly believe that the next chapter will be pretty chill. I believe that Reo will continue to be sad. Meanwhile, the others try to have a fun time, and then the chapter will end with Ego coming into the room, and he will say something about the U20 World Cup and leave us on a little bit of a cliffhanger. But that's what I think will happen. Please tell me in the comments what you think will happen. Anyway, if you like Blue Lock and videos like this, then I would highly suggest you subscribe to this channel. And while you are at it, leave a comment and a like, as it helps out with the algorithm a ton. And if you're curious to see another video of mine, then please watch the video that will be popping up on the screen now. Anyway, thanks for watching and have a great day. Bye.